Thank you all for being here. When we get to questions and answers, I expect that you guys will try and outdo the folks online and have your hands up more than they will. Let me just quickly introduce you to these guys. This is Coach Charles Adams, otherwise known as OA, Officer Adams, and we'll explain that in a minute. And the gentleman to his left is Zach Yeager, who was his star quarterback and valedictorian of his high school at Minneapolis North, and he is now one semester under your belt in college, and we'll get to that as well. As Colleen mentioned, back in November, the piece aired in January, but back in November, we went and visited with Coach Adams' team up in Minneapolis North because he took what were perennial losers and turned them into state champs, but there's another part to this story. So let's roll the tape.
Bowlers with the ball.
It's more than just a great team. It's a dynasty.
Time to the end zone. It is caught. Touchdown.
Which once went 6 years without losing a single regular season game.
All the way in for a Bowlers touchdown.
But the football program at North High School in Minneapolis is also a lot more than that. In one of the toughest parts of the city, beset by drugs and violence, it's the rare source of local pride, and in some cases, the only thing keeping kids on the straight and narrow. If there's no football in this community, what happens to the kids that are playing for you?
Gang wars, shootings, car thefts, probably drug dealing. And a lot of these kids will probably fall victim to that because they wouldn't have anything to do.
Charles Adams is the man who's given them another way. He's the head coach at North High, the man who made this team and this community into winners, earning the love of players and their families along the way.
Hey, man, I'm so proud of y'all, man.
But Adams has another job too, and last May, it cast the local hero in a very different role, enemy of the people. It happened after the death of George Floyd under the knee of a city police officer. Lines formed in the street as angry protesters looted and burned, and riot police braced for the worst. Among them, Officer Charles Adams. When you looked into the faces of those people who were throwing things and yelling things, what did you see?
Disappointment. People fed up. People are tired of black people being treated the way they are by police officers.
You understood the anger.
I understood the anger. I do.
Obviously, a lot has happened since then. Do you still see the anger?
I think it's gotten worse. I know it's gotten worse. Our neighborhood is the crime is what, 200%? I mean, I think the crime rate and then just the perception of police it's gotten worse.
So let's talk about the perception of police. You grow up, your dad is a police officer, now an inspector.
Yes.
Your uncle was a police officer. You don't choose to be black, but you choose to be blue.
That's right. That's right.
Did you anticipate that it would be complicated?
Yeah, I did. You know, I figured it being complicated just because I wanted to focus in from the neighborhood that I came from. But I also knew that being in that profession and being black, everybody's not going to agree with it, and they're not going to see it the same way I did. I seen it as helping and giving back to my community, but you know, friends and families didn't see it that way. It still don't. So, you know, with the events going on in the world, it's amplified even more. It's like, you know, sometimes a lot of my buddies, they feel helpless. I mean, they're like, what are we even doing this for anyway?
When you say that some people still don't, does that mean that you are on the outskirts? Do people sort of keep you at arm's distance?
Well, not now, but I would say working back in patrol, yeah, that's fair. And then there's some people that still keep their distance from neither our family or just friends of, the family that are still in law enforcement.
You may have had, obviously, a different outlook on the police, given that your dad and your uncle were police officers. Zach, why don't you tell me a little bit about your upbringing, your family, and then we'll get into your perceptions of police officers.
Yeah, so I grew up with a white Jewish mother and an African-American father, so I really seen two sides of it. I mean, growing up, my dad's always told me, watch out for the police, make sure you're staying safe. And then even freshman year when I started driving, first time I got pulled over, I was already nervous of police. I got pulled over, scared for my life, hands on the steering wheel, kept my composure, and then by the time I got home, I was just crying in my mom's arms because it was really horrifying to just know what could have happened to me that night. So my perception of police has always been be cautious, like my dad's told me. And then it really, I wouldn't say it all changed, but a part of it changed when I met Coach Owe my sophomore year in my high school. Because to me, we built a great relationship. He was like an uncle to me, like a counselor, somebody I can talk to about anything. So then there's that part of him, and then there's also that he's a police officer. So I seen him as an uncle who also works as a police officer. I didn't see him as the same way I seen all the other police officers that I've encountered in my life.
Zach, the fact that your mom is white, your dad is black, did you recognize that they had different attitudes towards police officers?
For sure. My mom, she grew up in Minnesota. My dad grew up in Long Beach, California. So my dad, he's always been around black people. He's always told me since I was young, be cautious of police. I mean, the farthest back I can remember is Trayvon Martin having to have that conversation when I was young, having that conversation with my mom and dad in my living room with my brothers. And then there's my mom's side, who she works in juvenile probation. So definitely see both sides of it. And yeah, it's been two worlds growing up, but you gotta learn how to balance it out.
Did you think it would be, when you met Coach Adams, did you think it would be difficult for you to play for a gentleman who was also a police officer?
No, and the reason I say that is because from the day I met him, he built a relationship with me that was like no other. Like, Coach Owe, he's gonna introduce himself, he's gonna treat you like a nephew, treat you like a son. So you're not really thinking about, oh, he's a police officer, let me be cautious. You're thinking of, oh, I know this person cares for me, this person loves me. So you're not worried about that other side.
Coach, you grew up in Minneapolis. You go to Minneapolis North. Your father went to Minneapolis North. Why, as a police officer, do you decide that you want to go coach high school football?
Well, I love my school. That was the biggest thing. So I love my school and my community, and I'm the product of that environment. So I wanted to give back. I came from that school. My parents, uncles, mother, they all went to that school. My brother and sister didn't. I don't know what's wrong with them or something. Yeah, that's a different story. But
Did you go back to win football games and turn around a football program? Or did you go back to change attitudes and minds?
To change the football program, but also wanted to change the thought process. Growing up in I graduated in 1999, so I remember the school spirit, primarily basketball, going to the state tournament, winning championships, having an elite level basketball team, but not necessarily a football team. And I always dreamed of that. I played football at North, and I'm like, man, it'd be nice if we could be on a level like the basketball program has been. So I said, well, hey, I can't complain about it not happening. Let me try to do something about it.
When you arrive at Minneapolis North, I think you told me you had barely 15 kids out for football.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've got to go out and get some bodies.
Yeah, it was pretty tough. The tactic that I used to get kids probably wasn't the most effective, but so I wasn't thinking at the time, but I was working patrol Sunday, and I was going to everybody's house and knocking on the door.
In uniform?
Yeah, uniform. So that's probably how I ended up with 15 kids. 'Cause
Everybody's thinking, what did I do wrong?
Yeah, exactly. So, I only had 15 kids, and I was knocking on the door saying, hey, go to football practice. So that was pretty tough. And now, actually, that I think about it, I probably shouldn't have did it that way, but that's how I did it. And I just, I tell them all the time, I'll fool with the ones that fool with me. Like, if it was 15, I'm just going to go with that 15. And if it gets 30, 40, 50, I love it. But I put my energy into the ones that were here.
And now you do have a team of that many people.
Yeah.
Do you have parents who look at you and say, okay, police officer, I'm not so comfortable with you coaching my kid?
Yeah. We have those conversations. But for some odd reason, they can continue to send their kids to me. So something's working. And I'm up front and I just say, hey, if you don't like cops, I get it. They really don't have nothing to do with me because I'm not going to mistreat your son or your daughter because young ladies have played for us as well. So, but that's the only way that you can, that's the only way that you can build trust. And I continue to stand with that.
But you understand, or do you understand reservations when you're talking about the community that you came from and that you're dealing with?
Yeah.
Do you understand that people have reservations about getting close to police officers?
Absolutely.
Having trust in police officers?
Yeah, they do. They always will. They still do. And I tell them all the time, I feel the same way that Zach does. I was 20 years with the police department. If I get pulled over, I feel the same way because I feel I got to prove myself to what I was, and I'm working, and I still get questioned the same way. So it's no different. It's just really just having a mindset and leading by example and going from there to teach these young men the right way of things.
Zach, would you say that there was a difference between your attitude and your former teammates in high school towards Coach and those who didn't play football?
For sure.
And the way they felt about police officers?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say they would have the same attitude that I had before I met Coach OA. I mean, as most African-American young people do in this country, they're nervous around police, scared, cautious, and for good reason too. I mean, from what we've seen on the TV and seen on social media, we have reason to be scared and reason to be nervous. But once you start to build a bond with a police officer, not just OA, we have other officers on the coaching staff. So once you build a relationship with them, your outlook starts to shift a little bit. So, I mean, if I see a police officer in Minneapolis and if I'm just leaving practice and I see police coming down the street, I'm thinking, oh, that's probably one of my coaches. I'm not thinking, oh, let me be nervous. But if I'm somewhere else in the country or somewhere else in Minnesota, I might be nervous because I don't know who that person is that's pulling me over.
We should point out and add that Coach isn't the only police officer who was coaching this team. Your dad coaches with you, and you've got two other police officers with you, including one white police officer.
Yeah.
Does the white police officer, does Tim Lawrence have a more difficult time gaining the trust of the athletes?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, he's been there from day one too. So they see him. Dr. Yeager, Zach's father, they work together as far as the same positions. He's been in the community, We've all gone through some things, but I think he's established just as well as anybody else in the program.
Zach, you've heard the phrase systemic institutional racism. Mm-hmm. Do you think that is a fair and it's applicable when you talk about your peers and how they look at police officers in general?
I believe it is fair, and the reason I would say that is because just of what we've been fed, what we've seen on the TV, like I said earlier, social media is on TV every other day, you almost become numb to the feeling. You almost become numb to what you're seeing on TV. I mean, like, when George Floyd was murdered, my first instinct was, oh, that's just another one. That's just another thing that happened, something that happens continuously. So you also got to think like, oh, that could have been me, that could have been my brother, that could have been my uncle. So it really hits home, but then in the same sense, I feel like a lot of us are starting to become numb to it.
OA, when the George Floyd murder takes place, Do you see this as sort of the culmination of everything that your life has been about to this point? You've been living with this black and blue intersection, but now everybody gets to see it.
Yeah.
Did that create a sense of urgency in your mind, a sense of fear as to what was going to happen to your community, what might happen to the country at large?
You know, John, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've seen pretty much any situation that you can have seen as a police officer. And my wife, she'll tell you that I don't show a lot of emotion or fear just for the protection of them. But a year ago, I found myself in a place that I had never seen myself as an officer, fearful of life. Just imagine and you getting out of the squad car. And things like this can happen whenever, but you getting out of the squad car and you're hearing shots and you're hearing the bullets zoom, zoom, pass through you, and you don't even know where it's coming from. So and why am I even out here? What is the reasoning of me even being out here?
Did you feel conflicted, given that what we saw in the piece, that you understood the anger? Were you conflicted as a police officer coming from the community you did, knowing that your players might be subject to this at any time?
Yeah.
Did you find yourself, wait a minute, I got a foot here and I got a foot there?
Yeah. It's always been that way. It's always been that way. Confusion, it's like, this could have been one of my boys. It could have been my son. I have a 21-year-old son. It could have been my son. It could have been anybody that, was just minding their own business or doing what they were supposed to do or whatever. But just being out there, and it's like, for one, I got anger of why I'm even out here, but I know I have to do my job. I have to protect people, but it's all screwed up. It's like, why am I even out here? So.
Do you have an answer now?
No, man, it's screwed up, man. I couldn't even imagine, yeah, man, things are just still messed up. I can't even put words to it. So much has happened to all of us within a year. It's it's crazy.
At the very beginning of this, you said it's been this way and it will always be this way. Why? Why can't things change?
When you hear people say culture, the culture of a police department, you hear our community say, well, we need to change the culture and we need to get more people that look like the community they reflect. That'll never happen if you don't have people that are interested in that position or interested in that. And, our city says we want to diversify the department, but it's always a process. And if there's a process before you get to be even being hired, and that's flawed, you'll never get to that. It's about control. Right now I think the police culture, it's about control, and we're gonna do things the way that we've been doing them because we don't like change. And that's what this whole situation was. It was the more you said something to me, the more I'm gonna show you who's in charge and who's in power. And that will never go away.
I don't want to delve too much into Derek Chauvin, because I know that's going to be addressed at a later session, and we know the sentencing took place last week. But one of the things that Judge Peter Cahill said in the sentencing of Derek Chauvin was that he had abused his position of trust or authority. Zach, did you ever have trust in the police?
I wouldn't say I had trust in the police. I would say there's specific individuals within the police office that I trust, like my coaches. But overall, as a whole, I wouldn't say I had trust in police.
Coach, one of the things we should also point out is that you not only coached the football team, but eventually you decided to get off the beat and move into the school, essentially as the police officer in the school.
Absolutely.
How come there's a police officer needed in the school?
Well, you know, the position was a school resource officer, and the position is designed to bridge the gap between the community and police and be a resource to not only the students, parents, and staff, but the school community, and kind of avoid the situations of, you know, if something's going on in a school, a principal or administration has to call 911 for somebody that's on patrol to come handle the situation. So an in-house police officer. Now there are many things that can be cited or kids can be arrested for, but you wanted to focus on diversion. So you wanted to make sure that kids didn't get in trouble, and you wanted to divert them from the behaviors that could get them in the system. I figured coaching football and taking that position, it was a slam dunk. It's, you know, not only can I be with my kids 24/7, the teachers could rely on me making sure that kids do what they're supposed to do.
And?
With conditioning, yeah. So I was probably one of the most popular people in the school, because if somebody was off task, we'll say it that way, off task in classroom, they called down to Coach Adams' office, and I made sure they got on task at practice. So we got one thing. What is it? Tell them what it is, Zach.
CC?
Huh?
Talking about CC?
No, the NOMS.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. So we got a type of conditioning. If you don't know what conditioning is in football, it's basically he gonna run you until you throw up. So if we're not focused in school, not doing what we're supposed to do, he just gonna text the team group chat and he gonna say 1, and everybody knows what 1 means. And if somebody does something else, he gonna text 2, and everybody knows what 2 means. And once we get out there to practice, it's not gonna be much practice, and it's gonna be a lot of running.
I'm pretty petty with the conditioning. So I try to find any small thing to condition them. So it's like, oh, what, you call me by my first name today? Oh, get on the line. So, I mean, but that's just how I am, so.
So you were very much a part of the lives of not only your football players, but this entire student body at Minneapolis North.
Yes.
I can speak on that a little bit too.
Yeah.
What's that?
I can speak on that a little bit too. I mean, like, always really, when he's in school, he's a student resource officer, but he's really like a counselor. Because when there's issues in school, we have great counselors at our school, but even if I'm having girl issues, he's gonna be the first one I go to. I'm not gonna go to the counselor's office or the principal, I'm gonna go to OA's office. I mean, even like my whole junior year, we would get our lunch, me and like 3 or 4 guys, we'd get our lunch, we'd come to OA's office, we'd eat lunch in his office instead of in the lunchroom. Just talk about football, talk about really anything we want to at that time. And it was really a good experience to just be in there and hang out with him.
His brother Zay was the #1 of girl issues, so I think I need to get certified in relationship counseling. It actually is pretty comical because every day it was a different girl issue, so I took it. I rolled what it was.
That's why we don't want to defund the police, because we want you to handle those situations.
Exactly.
After George Floyd, though, something happens. Mm-hmm. The school board, the public schools in Minneapolis make a decision almost immediately. What do?
I'm gonna talk as politely as possible. My grandma told me, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. So.
But you're here to talk.
Yeah, I'm here to talk. Lord have mercy, Granny. We knew as a community that the decision to remove school resource officers from the schools was going to be a major impact in our school. Our principal, our parents, our kids, our community fought, said that we understand the perception of police to some people, but removing SROs that have established great relationships and have done the job wonderfully in the schools is going to impact our school the most. The thing that still upsets me is that wasn't taken in consideration And it was, well, we have a petition. There is a group of people that think that it is damaging to black kids to have police officers in the school with them. Now, this is coming from a community of kids that are from the southwest portion of our city, which are a little bit more privileged than the kids that we have. Probably have two-parent homes. Some of these kids probably drive to school, don't use transportation or public transportation, and probably never even had an interaction with a police officer ever. So that petition was made from that side of the community of kids saying, we don't need cops. But guess what? Since we don't need them, you guys don't need them either. So that destroyed the whole program, and that's where we're at now.
So a decision that was made at 20,000 feet, nobody ever comes to you and says, what do you think? How important is your role in this school?
Yeah, no. I mean, because, I've seen it so many times. The inner city kids, they get the scraps, so it was, once again, we were the sacrificial lamb to where we had to suffer. And, I just pray that something major doesn't happen, because I knew what would happen when it was, well, we don't want to have a relationship with Minneapolis police anymore. So then that puts our kids back in danger. There's a gang war going on. So if a squad car is not available to go to a school that's in the middle of a gang war, that means the safety of our kids is in jeopardy.
Zach, when the George Floyd murder takes place, does coach have to talk to you and your players, your teammates, and say, stay home? This is not your fight. This is not what you are supposed to do.
There was actually a Zoom call that took place I remember very vividly. It was right before Ori was going out into the front lines. He got the whole team on a Zoom call, and he told us, I don't know what's going to happen tonight. I can't predict the future. I can't tell you guys that I'll even see you tomorrow. But I just need you guys to stay home and stay safe, and I love you guys. And then that's really how the Zoom call ended. Kind of left all of us in shock, and we were all just praying for our coach, our uncle figure that was going out into those front lines.
Everything that's gone on after George Floyd, losing your role in the schools, you were still in the police department, but it causes you to have a change of heart about your career. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what happens?
Well, it wasn't immediately. So I think probably about 5 months, I was working patrol, and I realized that, I had been in the school for almost 11 years as an SRO. So 1 week you're doing school and mentoring and you're working in the school, the next week you're working 911 response. I didn't even know how to sign on to the computer, literally. Like, seriously, I didn't even know how to sign on to the computer. I had to call dispatch and ask them how to sign on. Once she got me signed on, the first call I got was a hit and run. And I had no idea how to even do it. I literally, so then going to call and seeing, defund or F the police, whatever. I'm like, man, this sucks. I can't patrol the way I want to. I want to hit the spots. I want to hit the neighborhood. I want to jump out and say, hey, go to the football field, the basketball, and talk, talk junk. You can't do that no more. And I'm like, this is weak. So I was blessed to just have an opportunity. I was approached by the Minnesota Twins organization, and after having a couple of conversations of, just kind of supporting Minneapolis police, they offered me a position, and I thought about it. And I said, you know what? I think I would beat myself up if I didn't take that opportunity, and I roll with it. And I'll be honest with you, if I was still working in the schools and I still had the position as an SRO, I probably wouldn't even considered it at all. But, I figured that, this was an opportunity, things that were changing, that went ahead and went with it, and things have been great.
So now you're the director of team security for
Correct.
Minnesota Twins, but there was one one part of the deal, which is you said,
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm straightforward. I'm up front. I told the president and owners, I said, not that I have any weight, but I said if I can't coach, it's a deal breaker.
so you stayed with the kids.
Yeah, I got to be with the boys. If I can't coach, you guys can find somebody else. It was never a conversation of, well, are you going to still coach? It was more of, the twins they were saying that's a priority to you. We support your priorities. So that's been great. I, was able to still stay with the kids and, maintain my duties with work. Players support the football teams, everybody in the administration does, and them boys they're their boys too. So it's been a true blessing.
And as we mentioned, Zach was valedictorian of his class at Minneapolis North. He was recruited by several Ivy League schools, Cornell, Dartmouth, Columbia, also Colgate. Zach, tell them where you got your first semester under your belt in school.
An HBCU in North Carolina called North Carolina A&T State University.
And you and I have talked about this, and before we open it up to questions, most people would say, wait a minute, you got recruited by some of the most elite schools in the country, and you chose to go to an HBCU in North Carolina A&T. Why?
I really felt like it was my duty to change the narrative. I mean, there's going to be people that say you had all these offers to go to these big schools where you can get a degree from these huge name schools. But for me, I feel like if my end goal is to go to the NFL, I can really do that from anywhere. So just to put on for my people, go to an HBCU, do the same thing I'm doing that I could do at Ivy League, I could do at HBCU. So really just change the narrative for my generation and show other kids that they could do the same thing that I'm doing and end up in the same place.
So for those who are watching online and those here, we're going to open it up for some questions because I'm sure that you've got much better questions than I asked. So right there, gentlemen, why don't we start right there? And
Sure. How are you? Thanks for taking the time. This is an amazing talk, guys. Coach, questions for you. If you're the chief of police and you have a first decision to make to change, first domino to fall to change the culture, what change would you make?
Great question. If I'm the chief of police, that for one, and I learned this from my dad, I'm gonna reach out to the people that I can trust in the community, and the chief has done that. My father, who's an inspector, has done a great job of doing that. Not only because that's all he knows, the people that he's grown up with and he's known in the community. He reached out to. But one thing that I would do as a chief is like the having recruits. Okay. Changing the culture. If we want to recruit and have more officers, when it comes time to where it's funding or budget issues, those officers that are the newer, that can change the culture, aren't going to be the first officers to leave. And that's really what's happening in Minneapolis. It's, when it comes to budget and you got to cut, it's going to be the guys that are, 1 or 2 years on, opposed to a guy that's got 25 years on and is like, well, I don't care about none of that. I'm not going to do that. That's one thing that I would interrupt immediately. And everything would be a case by case.
so instead of last in, first out, you want to change the culture, you got to get rid of the guys who have been part of the problem.
There you go. There you go.
Here's a question that we're going to take from online, which is, what would you tell other professionals that want to engage with local youth?
Do it.
But are there challenges? Are there complications? How do you change? You wanted Zach and the other kids in the high school and the other kids on the team to trust adults. And yet the adults you were asking them to trust in your case was a police officer. But what challenges are there in dealing with youth if you want to help them understand and contribute to changing the culture? Zach, maybe you've got opinions on this too.
You just gotta be able to be helpful and have a passion for it. And you gotta, my own kids tell me all the time, you just gotta be up to the date of what they're doing. So once you can get onto their level, and I know we conflict with the music stuff all the time.
A lot.
I was playing Belle Biv DeVoe and 1999 swing music. So, but you know, you just gotta adjust to what's going on, and I think that's the whole culture thing too. Of you got to be able to adjust to what's going on in whatever environment you're in.
Ready? Why don't we?
Zach. Okay. Zach, playing football, coming from your family where I'm sure you had duties that you had to do at home, what tips would you give the young people? How do you get to be a valedictorian? What was your secret to your success?
Really just put school first in everything that you do. I mean, Coach always knows if we got practice at 4 o'clock and school gets out at 3:30, if you got an hour of homework, do that hour of homework, 3:30 to 4:30. You're going to be late to practice, you might have to run, but it's always school first. You really just got to put school first in everything that you do, and don't procrastinate. I procrastinate a little bit, but I always make sure to get my schoolwork done before I go to workout or go to practice or anything. So just putting schoolwork first.
Zach was the one that pretty much initiated the competition of the GPAs, which is crazy. Like, I had guys actually fighting, no, I'm gonna get the 4.0. No, I'm a 3, oh man, I got a 3.7. And I'm like, what? That's pretty good. So I had to tell Zach, hey man, everybody trying to get this 4.0 like you, man. This, you know, let's make it fair. So, but he's the one that people seen the grades and they wanted to be just like that.
You can pick. I see hands up, so.
Coach, you recruited a white officer to coach with you, so you obviously have relationships across the racial line. Are you saying that the leadership of Minneapolis and the police department did not reach to you and other black officers when it was so obvious that it was necessary to start trying to change the culture? It's incredulous to me that with your leadership skills in the community, that you wouldn't be on the front line of trying to change the culture there. But you said at the very first answer that you've given up on that. So can you explain what's happened in the leadership there with this opportunity that has discouraged you so much?
Just to answer, two parts of the question. Coach Lawrence, like you said, relationship. One of the white police officers, he wasn't recruited because he was a police officer. It just so happens to be that he is a police officer and he had a relationship with our offensive coordinator that they played together in college. But me and him also had a relationship as officers. So coincidental. Have I given up? I wouldn't say necessarily given up, just for the simple fact of I'm in a new position in life right now. I see the struggles that my father goes through. It's hard to build a house by yourself. And I'm not saying I'm by myself, but it's hard to do things when you don't have the effort and support of others. There's no way I could have ran and developed this football program by myself, and it wasn't. People say, Coach Adams. As Zach, I don't even know what the playbook looked like. I don't call not one play, but I can motivate everyone on my team, and I can and I look to the great coaches that I have on my staff, and they're really the reason why the wheels run in this program. So the credit isn't just me, and that's how I felt with this culture change, you know, with the guys that are still there and my father is, hey, we're doing what we know we're supposed to do. We are trying to be an impact, and we're trying to be positive in these kids' lives. We're going to continue to do that regardless. But not everybody sees it that way, and not everybody is trying to lead by an example and follow the path that we lead. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Oh, okay, we'll get to you.
Great talk. As a black police officer coach, what do you say to this large group of people who are talking about defunding the police?
Great question. I don't even know what defund the police means. And a lot of people don't. I actually got a call a couple days ago, and a parent called me and said, hey, so when does the Police Activities League camp start? We ran a camp called Brain and Body that I developed about 10 years ago, and it was a sports fitness camp, a lot of donations, and we took kids on field trips, sports activities, 10 years. Free lunch, free breakfast, within conjunction of the public school as far as, you know, the federal program grants for food. So this is what we ran. So a couple of parents called and asked, well, when does that start back up? Because of the pandemic last year, things are canceled. And the sad thing about it was the parent had no idea that the program was ran by school resource officers. So therefore, no school resource officer program in PAL in the summer is ran by the school resource officer. So PAL was part of one of the programs that had to be defunded because they had to take bodies and put them back to the street. So there's no Police Activities League, there's no community engagement, and there's no SRO program, which we service the city. So camps like that we've done for 10 years where kids actually come to, it doesn't exist anymore because the programs don't exist. So, you know, that was a hard pill to swallow for people in the community. And now people are saying, well, oh, we didn't realize that was the same thing. Well, yeah, that's what it was.
Let's take one from online again, which is, how can someone who is not a police officer help in the movement you created of bridging divides?
What do you think, Zach?
I would say just being around. Just being around. I mean, like if an individual comes to our football practice, always gonna introduce them to us, and we're all gonna talk to them, listen to them. So really just being around us as young individuals, when those people are around us, we're gonna treat them with respect and always learn more about them and further the relationships with them. So just being around could change a life, really.
This sounds like a, if you will, a local single school activity we're talking about. And I guess the question I have is, what's the possibility of going to other schools in the local community and try to organize this same effort and have it grow from the bottom?
We talked about this. This is sort of the ultimate example of community policing.
Yeah.
So how do you replicate this?
And not to toot my own horn, but I think that the model of being an SRO and being police and community, I think we've put together a pretty good model, and I think that that's how it should be. And I'm seeing some of the questions kind of asking things like that, but I think the best thing for me was, in order for me to best give these kids in the community what they needed, was I had to be there with them. And I thought coaching was the best thing because, and you got to open yourself up to them. And there's plenty of videos that these dudes have gotten of me dancing, celebrating with them, crying in front of them, crying with them, just showing all kind of emotion that our community and what is not what's not shown. And, you know, saying things and having them hear things that they don't usually hear. I think that was a model that I put together real well, and just tears me up that it was.
So maybe I don't know if the crime statistics reflect the fact your presence and the other police officers' presence in the school. But let's assume that things improved and you changed minds and you changed attitudes and you helped bridge this gap. should this be a template for you and your fellow officers? And police have always been involved. There have been boxing leagues and such in communities all over the country. But should this be the model, which is instead of waiting for the kids to come to you after school, that the police officer should be in the schools, they should be coaching, they should be teaching, they should be counseling?
1,000%. That's how it should be. We're here to protect and serve the community. We shouldn't be waiting. We need to be proactive. Proactive with these kids' lives. Because if they had guns, we're going to proactive to get to them guns. Get at them before they get to there. And that's it. That's how I've always been.
Sorry, and then we'll get to you.
Yeah, Coach, you're really neat. You're unique, and would you let kids that you were close to go in, smash stores, steal, do whatever the hell they wanted to do? I can't see you standing there, and if we go to Portland and other places and they say, let's defund the police and let's just let things go, is this stick broken in this country?
You know, myself personally, my kids know the expectations, but I think a lot of the narrative sometimes was clouded of the looting and things like that. But then also a lot of people took opportunities to a vulnerable community to take advantage of it. And I seen both sides of that. As far as my football players and my kids, I told them that night, stay at home. Now, everybody didn't listen to me though, but for the most part, everybody did. So, but some of them didn't.
Zach, just to get you involved here, do you think that this can be replicated in other communities? I'm sure you've talked to other kids on other teams and they say, what? You got police officers for coaches?
Yeah, I definitely think it could with the right one, with the right group of people. I mean, you're not going to find 1,000 OAs out there. There's not everybody is as impactful as he is. So, I mean, just getting the right one in the schools could make a huge difference on all those kids that are in there, just like it did on me and a lot of my teammates.
A question from online, which is how do you, OA, and other police officers, how do you approach the idea of building rapport and share that with other people when you were part of the department? Did you tell them, hey, this is what we're doing, and you should get involved?
Yeah, that's the only way to do it. It kind of tooting your own horn and telling cops and telling people in the police department, fire department too, come check out the games, man. Come cheer these kids on. I mean, don't wait until we get to the U.S. Bank Stadium for the state championship for you to start supporting these kids. Come give them some. Biggest thing was, hey, come get these kids some food. Buy them a meal. Buy them some pizzas. Come serve them a meal. Anything to get engaged with them, because now they can see you in a different light, and they say, hey, oh, that's the officer. That's the person that came and gave us food at our team dinner. So just kind of putting the whole community thing back together and letting people know that it's about all of us.
You don't want them to see the black or the white or the blue. You just want them to see a person.
That's right. Now, I will tell you, John, I'm from the hood, so I'm kind of like, so the kids know what's up. But that's why I think being a cop was so good, because anything that I tell these kids is just not me saying. It's like I grew up 2 blocks from the school. My daddy grew up in the projects. So we can tell these kids everything, and they're like, okay, well, he's been through it. So
you had cred.
Yeah, do I got credit? Do I got street cred?
Yeah, you got a little bit.
Okay.
You got a little bit.
Cool.
Let's go to this woman, I think in the back. Did you have a question earlier? Okay, great. Go ahead.
First of all, Coach, I want to say you are admirable. You should be commended for all the work you have done.
Thank you.
Just not for your community, but for your students. And Zach, you are a shining example of the positives that can be a result of having a mentor, whether he is a police officer, a father, or an uncle. When you started the football program, you said there were 15 students. Mm-hmm. Has there been a matrix to follow during your course to see, A, how many students are now playing football, and Zach, which they did not have a football team, and now you're going to college playing football. How many kids are excelling? How many kids have stayed out of trouble? How many kids are going to college? Can that be measured? And if it can be, how come that's not marketable to the community in terms of replicating this program and ensuring that it continues?
It's a good question. We do have some very great success stories out of North High, not just athletes. Well, we did have a gentleman, Tyler Johnson, went to the University of Minnesota, all-time leading receiver, got drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and won a Super Bowl. So that Zach is going to be the next one of those. And we got a couple guys coming on the line. Well, I don't know if you're going to be as good as Tyler. No, sure. No, he'd be better. But we have what is not talked about a lot is the Zach Yeagers and the 4.0s and the Ivy League schools. And, we got a kid that's going to Penn State, and we've got kids being offered by big-time schools and kids competing for GPAs, because it's been so much of a narrative of, the north side of Minneapolis has good athletes, but. So we've kind of tried to erase that, but there's no questions to be asked. Now, it's when you come to our school, they have grades, they have test scores, they're great football players, they're great young men, they have a family support. You've also noticed Zach said uncle quite often, and actually that mindset came from his father, Dr. Yeager. A lot of people say, well, father figure. That's not how we think in our community. We look at it this way. Your mother and your father are my brothers and sister. So that makes me what? Your uncle. Mm-hmm. So all these are my little nephews. I don't want to be anybody's father figure because everybody has parents. So I'm big unc to them. That's how we go. So these are like my little nephews, and their parents are brothers and sisters to me. So that's how we roll. But just going back to just the success story, I tell every kid, I say, hey, if you stick in this program, you will go on to the next level. Now, what level that is up to you. And we've established enough relationship to where every kid that wants to go to college, they'll go. They'll go. Every year, all of our seniors graduate and they go to college to play football. It's just depending on where they want to go. And 10 years ago, when I had 15, or 11 years ago when I had 15 kids, I said to myself, the only way anybody will take us serious is if I run my program serious. And I said, we can win 1 million games, but if we're not dominating with getting kids into college and even having an opportunity to go to pro, then, what are we doing? So, and that's kind of been the mindset.
Let's just take this back as we close out to where we started, which is, given the levels of hostility, not just in Minneapolis, but in communities across this country, between the police and the community that they're supposed to be policing. And Zach, you said that part of your reason for going to North Carolina A&T is to help change the narrative, not just about where you go to school, but long term. If I bring you back here in 20 years, are we having the same conversation about policing and communities?
I'll start this. I would hope there's a change, but I know we can't say for certain that there will be. So that's really all I have to say about that.
Yeah. A lot has changed in 1 year, but ain't really too much changed. So.
Charles Adams, Zach Yeager, thank you guys.